Welcome to the podcast today, where we celebrate innovation for a happy planet. I am your host, Abigail Carroll. You may recognize today's guest from episode 5. We're here with Bernard Hidier, a French expat living in Maine who co-founded Finsulate, which offers a non-toxic antifouling solution that mimics a sea urchin. Well, Bernard is back with us because somehow he has managed to co-found and co-manage more than one company at the same time. Kids, do not try this at home. If you remember, Bernard is originally from Brittany, France, and that is where KarrGreen hails from. KarrGreen is a biofuel company that is transforming agricultural waste into fuel for cars. With a growing footprint of filling stations in France, KarrGreen does make one wonder why we are digging up lithium for batteries when our abundant agricultural waste could be used instead. For Bernard, however, the corporate structure is as important and innovative as the fuel itself. KarrGreen focuses on building local communities, making both its clients and its suppliers vested stakeholders. Let's hear it from Bernard. Welcome back to the podcast, Bernard.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate to be back with you.
You are one of the co-founders of Finsulate, which is a company that we reviewed, we talked about in a podcast last fall. So it's still available online. But you have also been working for very many years on a project called KarrGreen, which is a project you started in France. And now you're growing that business there and you're talking about maybe bringing it here to the United States. So tell me a little bit about what KarrGreen does.
So KarrGreen was born 12 years ago and in the west of France and in a very particular part of France, which is a peninsula, Brittany. And in Brittany, basically post-war, the agriculture developed in a very intensive way. An intensive way means using actually a lot of fossil-based or extracted minerals for actually the crops, but also to feed an agriculture and farming that is based on pig raising, poultry, and dairy farming. And getting into like the years 2000, 2010, suddenly this food production system, which is really embedded with fossil fuel, started bursting at the seams. And one of the signs was obviously the nitrogen and phosphorus runoffs that created algae blooms on the coast. And so at the same time as Brittany being a very farming intensive area, it's also a touristic area. So obviously one was hurting the other. And it's also a peninsula that actually produced only 8% of the energy they use. So the idea was to try to find a way to actually make people being in control of their destiny and use the resource they had in their hands and they didn't know or didn't have realized the way they could use it to be able to produce their own energy and their own fertilizer.
I love the sound of this. So tell me, how does this work? Can we all just start making our own energy?
How do we do this? Basically, we use a process that's called anaerobic digestion, which encompasses actually to collect organic waste, all types of organic waste. So from farming, it's going to be pig manure, cow manure. It's going to be also waste from the agro industry or processing. So it could be all the, meat processing waste.
Can you give me an example? What is an example of meat processing waste? What does that mean? Is that fat?
Yes, fat, blood, all types of residual thing. So rich organic matter is actually mixed together with low potential organic matter such as manure, but manure has more fiber, which is useful too. So basically, it's managing the logistics of the different compound. To give you an example, the 60,000 tons processing facility we built and started operating in 2016 now is using 52 types of organic waste. And again, the idea is the people who are bringing the organic waste are also shareholders of the facility.
Well, I want to get into that structure, but first I want to get a little bit more of an understanding of what is this chain you're putting together, like the actual product. So you're bringing all this waste, it's going through a cow's stomach. You've used that metaphor.
Yeah, the reason I use the cow stomach is because a cow stomach, as many people must know, has actually 5 stomachs. So we don't have 5, but we've got kind of 3. And so it's a process where you mix these different things, and our chemists are good at trying to find the right balance to have actually the best production of the biogas that's going to come out of it. So we would say like it's 2 to 3 weeks to get actually through the different processes in a warm tank without oxygen to actually generate this biogas. And depending of how you monitor the compound and the mixing of these different organic matters, you're going to have a content of what we're looking for, actually the methane, CH4, which is exactly the same molecule as the natural gas that you get in the pipes all over here that can be from fossil origin, such as shale gas. It's exactly the same molecule, except that it's coming from a waste.
Right. We're not drilling.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can have a content of methane that could be like around 70% if you do a good job. And then the rest will be CO2 and then impurities. And CO2 today also can be recovered. And you use actually liquefaction process at the end of the process. And you're able actually to capture the CO2 and use it, because CO2 is very bad when getting in the sky and has greenhouse effects. Same problem with CH4, but it's actually a very valuable commodity and it's used all over the chain production of food processing.
So what are some of the positive benefits of CO2?
So basically it's used in, for example, in meat processing in order to neutralize the environment for bacteria and contamination, but it's also used in the medical field. It's used also in greenhouses. A lot of CO2 in Europe, for example, has been the byproduct of fertilizer production in Northern Europe. One of the biggest producers in Europe is Norsk Hydro in Norway, and they use oil and gas, their gas field, to produce nitrogen, ammonium nitrogen. And side product of this production is CO2. This CO2 is put in tankers and sent to the greenhouses of the Netherlands to actually produce vegetables. So this is something we can actually produce at the local level. And again, what is behind our approach is its proximity. It's basically the people who need to use the energy have the possibility to produce it themselves.
Right, nearby. So let's get a little further down the chain. You've taken this through the cow and you've got this CH4, which is bioidentical to what we're drilling for. And what happens at that point?
So there's two ways. Up to recently, you can inject it directly in the grid. And so basically, as one mentioning, it's exactly the same molecule. So you inject it in the grid, and up to a few years, you could actually get paid for that. What we decided is being able actually to recover it at another part of the grid and actually building our gas stations and biogas stations, which can actually feed trucks that are actually powered by biogas. So this is one way, and that's what we've been doing so far. Again, in these schemes, when we open a biogas station, we have the same philosophy as for the production units. We also, in that case, keep only 30% of the shareholding of those biogas stations, and 70% is shared between people who have the resource I was talking about, the organic waste, and so they are part of the economics of the gas station, but also people who will be using the energy. So that can be also the same people, whether they're industrial, etc., but also logistics platform and transporters. So that gives them the opportunity to be actually monitoring their own transition to decarbonization. And this is a process that actually is imposed to them not only by regulation, but also because their clients, think about big supermarket chain or big brands, are now like going through the process of decarbonization fast. So they basically asking their providers or their service providers to actually show that they're going through this phase.
So can you give me a sense of scale? You're pulling in all of this bio waste, and let's set aside the supermarket for a moment, but we all fill our tanks. So we all have a sense, we all heat our houses. Mm-hmm. So how much biomass does it take to, fill a car?
Well, basically you get to the same autonomy you would have with a full tank for a car. And for trucks, on compressed biogas, so that's the gas that goes through the pipes, and then you compress and put in a tank in a truck, you get 650 kilometers. When we go into liquefied, if we liquefy it, and now we've got a range of trucks coming into stream, and they exist in the US and they are coming also in Europe. you're in liquefied form for the gas, and you can go to 1,500 kilometers easily. So that's really long haul. And so that's totally matching the price. And we're price-wise competitive compared to, especially in Europe with diesel and the competitive things. But the other thing you need to take into account is our clients have to face new regulations about air pollutions in big city centers. And the biogas burns cleanly. So there's no emission of particles.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So you are not drilling, you have a much lower carbon footprint on the processing side. Of course, you have to move the waste, but still you're doing these things regionally.
May I just mention the waste is collected by biogas power.
Yeah, right. Okay. So there's one concept here I really don't understand. If you have methane that's bio-identical, why are the emissions not identical?
Oh, no, we're talking about the fact that when you drill...
I see. Yeah.
Yes, that's not the same footprint.
Right.
And basically, that's you extract a fossil fuel-based thing compared to actually recycling something.
Right.
And I need to add something because we've been looking so far only at the energy side of it. So basically, I was talking about the 60,000 tons of waste that comes in. This is partially liquid and partially solid. But at the end of extracting the process, like the famous 2-3 weeks of getting the biogas out, you still have something. And this something is almost 60,000 tons of something. So it's basically you still have something. And this thing is what is residual is called a digestate. And the digestate is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus.
Right. So that's your fertilizer.
Exactly. So, but you can actually concentrate it, extract the water. That's what we're doing too. So we're able to recover water in a form that's going to be actually usable for agro-industrial process. So agro-food, it's very important. Water resource is constrained and more. And on the other side, we give back to the farmers a fertilizer that they can use instead of the nitrogen ammonium that was produced by fossil fuel and potash, which is extracted. And potash is the first resource in the world that we're going to run off. Potash is essential to guarantee the growth of any kind of agricultural crops. And this is the resource we're going to run off the fastest in the world.
How many of these gas stations do you have?
So we have 6. We're opening them in different parts of France because the idea is to basically have the network. And so we built the cooperation and I would say the partnerships on the local basis. So it takes more time compared to classical oil and gas company who can decide to buy, real estate here and invest the full amount of a gas station. We would talk about 1.5 million euros. What we do is like all people, commercial people, go around and go meet the people who have waste, organic waste, and organic waste cost to dispose of. And they go also and meet the logistics platform and the local transporters, and they build those partnerships. So it takes more time, but this investment in time and money, because time is money, guarantees that those systems are like for the long term. And everyone on both sides, the people who provide the resource on one side and the people who will be using the energy on the other side in these stations, they're around the table. So they know how the price is fixed. They're interested in the economics working for these stations, and they take a very good care of these stations. We're very proud about how clean they are because nobody will drop a paper because that's theirs. So this is built it gives us the base load on the offtake side. So basically, they will be the people who are shareholders will bring their trucks to take biogas from these stations. On the other side, the people who have the resource and the organic waste will be also committed to make this station work. And then we've got the third tier, which is the new customers and the people who can come now today in France, buy a biogas car and come to these stations. And in order to get them on board, we decided to go one step further. And that was a dream we had years ago when we wanted to go one step beyond. We have the municipalities, we have the towns, we have the entrepreneurs, the companies understanding and wanting to get in. And we say, how do we get to the citizen consumer? That was our dream. And there was nothing we could do. Obviously, there was the carbon credit, but we're very suspicious about those systems.
Right.
So we decided to look at it differently, and we decided to measure and trace through blockchain the carbon emission reduction that the production of our biogas generates. And what we do, we're not selling it against a carbon certificate. We emit tokens and we give them to our customers. We reward them. And then they can exchange those tokens between themselves. So we create actually a goodwill of recognizing that the people who have invested in those cars, the transporters who made the effort of paying a bit more for like a biogas powered truck, though they will get the return because it actually operates more efficiently and it's less costly to maintain. But we give them the rewards. And the idea has been we're able to quantify the emission reduction. When someone fills up their car, there will be like an amount of token issued, and we're going to split some to the customer, some to the distributor, and some to the producer because we can trace it back to the producer.
So interesting. I mean, there's so many ways to look at this. But there, you did say, so you need a special car to run this fuel?
Yeah. Well, they're the same combustion engines as, think about the car you use if you use a fuel-powered car.
Yeah.
What happens, the first thing you do is like the liquid you've got in your tank, you need to mix it with air to make gas.
Yeah.
The problem is like it's not very efficient, okay? It's getting more efficient and there's work being done. Here you have got the gas right away. So basically what you see is like on trucks and on cars, you have potentially longer life duration for your combustion engine. And also you've got a cleaner way of getting the combustion. And so the maintenance is less.
So who's buying biofuel vehicles right now?
People are starting to buy at the local level. Our stations are just, I need to mention, we also producing green electricity and we're distributing green electricity. So our model today on our basic stations are biogas and green electricity, and we generate green electricity from solar panel that we have on top of the stations and potentially on extra real estate we've got next to the station. When we actually find a good spot for our station, we might have extra space and we produce additional electricity that we're able to store or sell locally, again, with people participating in the investment, co-investing with us. And today, yes, you see transporters investing in gas trucks. Why? Because that's the only way in the future they will be able to get to the centers of big cities. There's restrictions have been put. They've been deferred this year in France because of recovering from COVID and high inflation and the gas price going up in general. There was a lot of constraint on the transport and transport companies. But this is coming. Basically, there's a problem of inner city air pollutions. And these trucks are able to get in because they're under the criteria and the limits.
So they have better emissions ratings.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. No, like spectacularly. Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about 80% to 90% less emissions of particles.
We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors, but when we return, we'll hear what inspired Bernard to start KarrGreen and why he thinks Maine could be the perfect home for their work in the United States. A big thanks to the Maine Technology Institute, MTI, investing in innovation for a prosperous Maine. MTI is Maine's unique public-private partnership whose core mission is to diversify and grow Maine's economy by accelerating innovation in the state's targeted technology sectors. MTI offers grants, loans, equity investments, and services to support Maine entrepreneurs and organizations as they transform their innovative ideas into new products, services, and companies, leading to the creation of quality jobs for Maine people. For more information about MTI and its programs, please visit mainetechnology.org. For a blue economy to thrive, people need to use more sustainable products. But which products? And will consumers actually adopt them? Innovators like you are hustling to figure this out. Spark number 9 can tell you if there's demand for your product. Spark markets your product before it's built using online advertising so you launch smarter. Have a big idea? Vet it with Spark before you build. Visit Spark online at www.sparkno9.com or find them on LinkedIn. Maine Venture Fund is a state-sponsored venture fund here in Maine with a mission to support the highest potential Maine-based startup companies by investing early-stage capital. Maine Venture Fund's goal is to accelerate job growth and economic opportunity for the people of Maine. Learn more at mainventurefund.com. Welcome back to Happy Planet. My guest today is Bernard Hidier of KarrGreen. I asked Bernard to tell us what sparked the idea of this project 12 years ago.
Okay, so at the time I had a company, I was investing in forestry and trying to do, again, decentralized production from discarded biomass that had no value, but like looking at small co-investment, again, same philosophy with local collectivities and local towns. We started one exactly where we've put the first methane anaerobic digestion facility. And we did it with biomass. And then we discovered that all these issues I was mentioning, like even the price of agricultural land in Brittany was skyrocketing because the food industry didn't know where to discard their waste. And there were limitations of how much you could put per hectare because of nitrogen runoffs. So we put them around the table and started building that. And that's kind of organically how it worked. And today we've got probably identified around 120 million worth of projects that we can do. And we are already involved in two big projects, one in west of France, not far from the first one, and one in east of France, for which we've been approved by the European Union. And the idea would be to build these facilities and do the liquefaction and recovery of CO2. And we have the next step. We're ready for the next step, which is we'll be able to generate and produce green hydrogen from our CH4, but that's only when market will make sense. So We're not exposing ourselves to the market at the moment, yet we're ready.
Yeah, it's a rodeo. I mean, the green hydrogen story is so interesting. We've had a few people talking about green hydrogen on this program.
Well, to be honest, there's green hydrogen being produced today in land in France in some situations which I can't really understand. And we know roughly where we are in terms of price. When we're ready, we are very competitive.
So I want to get back to the stakeholder engagement a little bit, because I think this model, this community model, is really compelling. Mm-hmm. You're creating communities. I mean, I've always said that, I had this oyster farm. The community wants you to succeed, or they don't want you to succeed, and they decide. And what's so interesting is that you are bringing so many different players into this, and it's decentralizing an industry that is so centralized.
No, I mean, it's coming from historically, it's culturally, it's coming from my background. And I'm from west of France. They were like mutualization system, mutual banks. My grandpa was at the head of one, then my father was there. And again, I'm talking about local banks where people put their money, and when someone has to build a barn, well, everyone not only will, vote to get the money, but also help build the barn. So this is really like ingrained, and I really pay a lot of respect of the way people were doing things at the time. And they were also very conscious of what they had in their hands. So they were not disconnected from how they were producing things. Everything was really used. And so this kind of sense has always been like kind of irrigating what I do. And that's why I think a year and a half ago here in Portland, like I was asked to do a talk about innovation. And I was like, why are they asking me about innovation? And then I ended up saying, well, it's more in that's important because it's in you. So you all innovators, just think about your history, what you learned from the previous generation, etc., and make something you like, because you don't have to have an MIT degree or whatever.
For sure. So you're raising money right now. And how does the stakeholder model affect that? Or does it?
Well, it does, because behind the green label of many funds, there's the necessity to give like a high return to their investors. So obviously that selects a lot of people out. But that you get to people who really have a mandate and are looking to put their money to good use and being able to show credentials. So it's a different profile of, I would say, investors.
It's not your classic VC, but there is money to be made, it would seem.
Yeah. I mean, the initial ask is to look at green bonds, and the returns are like, we're talking 7 years. And because these models work very well. Nevertheless, there was expression of interest to come in capital. We'll see how it goes. We privilege actually capital if it comes from people who are either technical partners or like opening new markets for us. It needs to be not only money. It needs to be money with something else because that's how we are. We're a small structure, but we build very, I would say, strong partnerships with people who are able to help us with the industrialization and also, I would say, the standardization of our blocks. So we talk always about our Lego blocks. And so we've got the Lego of the compression. We've got the Lego now of the liquefaction. And that means you could put a gas distribution station out of the network of gas and also collect it directly into a farm here and there. And we've got the Lego for the hydrogen distribution. But again, we put them when they make sense to everyone that's around the table. And it works price-wise.
Amazing. So you started this in France, and Europe has a different environment than the United States regarding everything that is climate related.
Mm-hmm. And energy price too, because
right.
I mean, United States became not only a huge producer, but like almost one of the first exporters of energy. And that's the trend that's pursued because suddenly in order to substitute to Russian supply, Germany and most of Europe has to rely on one way, like the Gulf, and the other side, United States of America. So it's a different market, yet I think it's interesting being in Maine because, and especially recently, I've been hearing about initiative about, making food production sustainable in Maine. And one of the aspects I think need not to be missed is our food production these days, whether it's the food production itself, but like fertilizer, transport, and all, decarbonization 1, 2, 3, like these 3 steps need to be understood from the start. I think it's very important that in this reflection, which I think is really good, it feels good to be in Maine and seeing this kind of thinking process, but that aspect will be important. And what we've done so far, which I describe as decarbonization on land, now is about to happen on the water, so on the sea in Brittany, and I can't tell much more, but yes, the same applies to fishing fleets, and we're able actually to help them with that too.
So would you start this project in Maine? Would Maine be a good test site for you?
Yeah. Maine has the right vibe for it, as it had the right vibe for starting Finsulate. And it's interesting because it goes beyond purely, I would say, the economy and the approach. And it's the feeling that we had moving with my family 5 years ago and finding a strange familiarity between what Maine is, what Mainers are, how they look after each other, how they look after their environment, and where we're coming from, which is
Brittany.
I'm coming from, west of France. Yeah, there's a lot of. So it's a natural fit in my way. And again, Maine has then this power of, as Maine goes, so goes the nation, they say.
Who says that? Governor Mills?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like apparently it's a coined phrase that's been going on and on, but it's true. You can see for Finsulate, I go nationwide and talk to people, and they look up to Maine on environmental and I would say this approach of a responsible approach about how to do things and protect the environment. So
speaking of Finsulate, you are an entrepreneur with 2 massive projects. How do you manage?
I probably don't manage properly.
They all seem to be going in the right direction. So what is the key?
First of all, the KarrGreen project is, my main partner is on the ground every day, and we've got a great team. And it's a small team, but very efficient team. And we've built those relationships about now for the last 12 years. And so that helps a lot. But that requires for me to get up very early at times to take calls or being on video calls, especially with partners, etc.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Then I take a nap and then I get back on Finsulate, where I've got a fantastic business partner here who's also very supportive, and the support of our team in Europe. So it's stimulating.
It sounds like the key is good partners.
Yeah. Look, I think the I would say key element of what we do is we have no religion about anything. Okay, so we're not stuck into a business model. CH4 is the one that we've been, I think, really managing and knowing very well and testing very well, but then we are very flexible. The idea is really to come, I think, to each situation. You need to look at what are the local resources, what is the waste, what is whatever they have, and then get these people around the table and mutualize them and tell them, look, you don't know, but like your neighbor also would like to come with you. And these people you don't know who are transporters, they would like also. And you get them around one project and you build it sized to what they need. And that's the key.
Yeah.
But you're not prisoner of a business model or a technology.
Yeah.
You're able to be flexible. Today we are assessing technologies coming from different parts of the world that will give us actually, we hope, a lot of flexibility to really go even further in terms of small, deployable and standardized systems. But again, it will be the local situation that will dictate.
Yeah. I love a decentralized economy, and it's kind of ironic because France is one of the most centralized of the world, and maybe that's what you were feeling back in Brittany.
No, it's totally Jacobinism in France is part of that.
So tell me this: what gets you up in the morning, like at 4:00 to get those calls? Like, you seem to be very driven. What's the big goal for you?
I would say that when I go back to France, and if I go back to where I'm coming from, there's people my age, so I'm in my mid-50s now, who are farmers. And there's a lot of farmers bashing in France because, they use all these fertilizers, these chemical products, etc. But at the end of the day, you need to look at the situation they are in. They are prisoners. Dairy farmers in France, they send their milk every day or every other day to what was called a cooperative, but doesn't behave as a cooperative anymore. And they will know only 2 weeks down the road how much they're going to be paid per liter.
Wow.
And in the meantime, they have to just make a living. They don't know what the weather's going to be, whether they will be restricted in using water for their crop. And the fertilizer prices multiplied by 8 last year. What I can do at my little scale is to say, okay, we're going to give you like a bottle of oxygen because we know that if you're given the opportunity, you want to pivot. You're not like in love with what you do. And to be the statistic that's horrendous is every other day, a farmer in France commits suicide. So let's not be crazy. The food system we've built is not working anymore. We saw it during COVID here when suddenly you had in Midwest culling of 100,000 of pigs because the slaughterhouse and the pig sausage facility couldn't process because they were suddenly like the restaurants were closing. There's a formula that I love. Actually, I studied a bit at the University of Cambridge, and it's rewiring the economy. I like that. Rewiring the economy, and I'm trying to rewire it at a human scale. That would be kind of what drives me, and also because when you meet people, because when you do the job we do, it's like to get people around the table. Suddenly you get people who don't know each other or had never like heard about the business model of the others or even their history or who they are, and we sit and we have a lunch because we're in France when I go back, or we have a talk through Zoom, etc. And it's community, it's sharing, it's talk, it's socializing.
That's great. So are you optimistic that we're going to meet our climate agenda?
I don't know. It's, the data is so mind-boggling. I think unfortunately, we are passing some thresholds and we don't know what's going after. So the models are like built, with kind of a repetitive kind of pattern. But the problem is like when you pass something, you get into a new world. So I'm trying not to focus on that. And that's definitely not the first thought I've got when I wake up in the morning at 2. I'm just focusing on making the people we're going to meet on Zoom or talk to and make sure they have a living tomorrow. Because this is, what happened over the last year and a half is suddenly like, okay, there was all this agenda, which is great. Again, I'm not discussing it, this agenda about saving the planet, but now we've got to save livelihoods. And so what we're doing here is really saving livelihoods. And the cherry on the cake is we have an impact, whatever it is, as we can measure it, but in the right way to rewire the economy or rewire their livelihood in a more sustainable way, where they can be resilient, that they can have hope that there's a future for the next generation, and they're in control.
I love it. That's beautiful. Bernard, thank you for coming. This has just been amazing.
It's always a pleasure to discuss with you, Abigail.
Your creativity and your vision is just beautiful, and I can't wait to start seeing KarrGreen here in Maine. Anyhow, thank you so much. A big thank you to Bernard for coming back to Happy Planet to talk to us about KarrGreen. When George Bush said the problem with the French is that they don't have a word for entrepreneur, he clearly had not met Bernard. If you are interested in learning more about KarrGreen, check out their website, www.karrgreen.com. And if you'd like to learn more about Bernard's other startup, Finsulate, check out episode 5. Thank you once again for listening. Please follow Happy Planet wherever you tune in and leave us a rating and review. It really helps new listeners discover the show. Happy Planet was reported and hosted by me, Abigail Carroll. I am also the executive producer. The talented Matt Patterson is our producer and editor. Composer George Brandel Egloff created our theme music. Learn more about my work and get in touch by visiting happyplanetpodcast.com.